We're in what, for lack of a better term, is just considered the NIL era, transfer portal era. It's a fight that a lot of programs are having internally. Some are haves, some are have-nots. Some are haves that need to exhibit it a little bit more. What's the challenge been to maintain roster integrity while also scanning the landscape and seeing if there's a Penn State caliber player out there? It's 365 days a year, which recruiting always was, but now the process of talent acquisition has morphed so much. You probably have people employed in this building in roles that may not have existed even 5 years ago. Do you not?
Yeah, that's definitely fair. It's interesting. I'll kind of lead with this. The first thing I think is interesting, fascinating, frustrating, is the people that have always been giving money, they were way ahead, because all they did was take a way that was viewed as illegal under the old NCAA rules, and they just said, look, you have a culture of giving already, and we're just going to transfer it now.
A culture of giving is really kind. It's a really kind bow to put on it.
But my point is literally these people are used to giving to the players. Well, you're going to do it, and now you're just going to do it this way. So those programs were way ahead. I would also say programs like Penn State, historical programs, I think a lot of them have struggled. You've spent so much time educating your fan base and your donors on what you can do and can't do that it's hard. And I think most people start off, including myself, being uncomfortable with it, and then you have to change. And it's no different than any other industry, right? The rules change. You better change with them. You better embrace the new change. You better be bold and aggressive, or you're no longer going to be competitive and you're no longer going to exist. And that's any industry.
I assume you talk to several coaches behind the scenes. You got a network of friends just like I would in the media world. Forget about naming names, obviously, but off the record, when this thing first became what it is now, it seems like it sort of was ham-fistedly, Meemaw term, ham-fistedly just thrown down the pike, and you guys were told, figure it out. What were those conversations like?
Well, one of the things that probably frustrates me is people say, well, this has had unforeseen consequences. We didn't know. Yeah, everybody within the business knew exactly where this was going. I think at the end of the day, the NCAA was getting sued in every direction. They knew this was coming. That's really what we're going through now. We've kind of dug into the rule book the NCAA has and says, okay, what are the rules that we're most at risk for getting sued on? And let's try to get rid of those rules. And the rules that, let's be honest, are not enforceable anyway. They're in the rule book, but nobody can really enforce them. So I think that's what you see happening. I think at first there was frustration within the coaches. I think there's still to this day a fear and a reality of a lot of really good coaches in college football that are leaving to go to the NFL. I think that is a real thing. And I also think there's a sense now with coaches and athletic directors that we all recognize that some form of collective bargaining agreement or something is inevitable for the sport, that the players are going to get paid. And I think now people would rather that happen than what we're living in right now, because there's no guardrails. There's no guardrails for the recruits. There's no guardrails for the coaches and the administration. Everything's verbal deals. And I don't think it's in the game's best interest, and I don't think it's in the student-athlete's best interest. And again, I'm on the side that I think the players should be getting paid. So I don't want to be misinterpreted what I'm saying. I just think there's got to be some type of guardrails to protect the student-athletes. You saw examples of guys signing with a school or committing to a school because they thought they were going to get X. And the conversations that I've had is a lot of times those things aren't panning out the way they thought they would.
Well, I had a big fear when this first started out of the term Wild West that gets thrown around a lot, which was apropos, frankly, with the way that this started out. But the more people you talk to on the business side of NIL, And especially at the administrative level, the folks who have started to get their act together, the more I've talked to them, thankfully, I've gained a little confidence over probably the past 6 months that the direction you're talking about going, the collective bargaining, possible, dirty word here, employment status future of players, it's a terrifying concept for a lot of people. You just mentioned, though, the alternative is probably more terrifying. And, my mind is now we're probably gaining towards an eventual cruising altitude that, while it's radically different, the net result of it may not be all that dissimilar than what we had 10 years ago. The tier structure may be strikingly similar. It's just the net result is the players have deeper pockets in the process.
Yeah, and there was a bill in California. I think it was like 30% of the revenue and things like that. So I think that's what's going to happen. And I think, to be honest with you, most people, whether it's commissioners, ADs, head coaches, I think would embrace that and be comfortable with it. At least everybody kind of knows what you're dealing with.